Hi everyone and welcome to my studio. It's Thursday night. We're going to make something different. We're going to do freestanding lace that's got a little bit of bling with this mylar that I've put inside of it. It's three-dimensional. You can use it to fill with flowers or one of those electric candles or some candy or some Easter eggs, and it makes a cute little gift for Easter. It's easy to do. It's got freestanding lace embroidery. You need to do a little bit of stitching on the machine right here to put your pieces together, and then a little bit of hand sewing to attach all of this together. Now, if you don't like hand sewing, you can always use a hot glue gun to assemble this little basket. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, this project is done in 3 hoopings, 2 of them to do the front and the back of the basket, and 1 to do the bottom and sides of the basket. So you will need 3 pieces of dissolve away mesh stabilizer to fit your 5x7 hoop. So I have secured it in with these T-pins, and what I like about using these T-pins is when I'm only stitching 1 piece of stabilizer and not a lot of fabric and bulk to it, I like to use the T-pins to keep the fabric from being pulled into the center by the forces of the embroidery stitches. So I use these T-pins, and they're just ordinary T-pins, like here's one, like this, that you can get in the upholstery section of your store, and you just simply fit them in right along the edges where the inside and the outside edge of the hoop. And this doesn't matter whether you have a multi-needle machine. So I just put them all along around an inch apart all the way around, and that will keep that fabric from being pulled into the center and distort your stitches. Okay, this is a simple one. This is really all you need other than embroidery thread. I'm going to use white in the needle and the same color embroidery thread or bobbin thread in your bobbin. If you want to add a little bit of extra bling, I recommend you use the clear iridescent mylar, and this I got at the party store, but you can also get the one that's made for embroidery as well. There's not much difference between them. I use them interchangeably. This is a whole lot cheaper than when you buy it for the sewing industry. Now, granted, if this were for a project that was going to be laundered a lot, I'd buy the one specifically for sewing. But being that this is an Easter basket that's going to be used either as a tea light lantern or to hold an Easter egg or some goodies, it's not likely to be laundered very often. You need 2 files, which is the bunny front and back file, and then you need the sides and the bottom. Okay, let's get started. Let's go to the machine. I've loaded the file into the machine. This is for the front or the back of the basket. Set it to the machine. Go into embroidery. And then really all you're going to do is stitch it. If you want the basket to have a little bit of bling at this time, just cover the frame with a little piece of the mylar and just start stitching. I've put white embroidery thread in the needle and white embroidery bobbin thread in the bobbin. Of course, you can use any color you like. It doesn't have to be white. It can be whatever. And then just simply stitch it. As soon as it catches a few stitches, you don't have to hold it anymore. I'm going to flatten this out a little bit better. Okay, now you don't have to hold it anymore. Once it's caught, it's going to go all the way around. Okay, and now this is going to stitch. My machine stitches at about 1,050 stitches per minute, and I've got it at the fastest it's going to go. And I'm just going to go ahead and let it go, and tells me it's going to take 32 minutes to stitch. So I'm not going to keep you watching this or use up the film to stitch all of this. So I will be back as soon as it's done stitching. Okay, what makes this freestanding lace is the fact that it's stitching in a grid and it goes diagonally up one side and down the other. Then it is going to do a cross to lock in some stitches, and it's going to repeat this process to double lock those stitches together so that it'll hold up to having no fabric or no stabilizer behind it. Because once it's rinsed away, all you have left to keep your project together is the thread. Okay, I'm going to let this finish stitching out. Okay, it has finished stitching the front side of it. I will repeat this process again for the back side of it. Couple things you can do to make this have a little variation. You don't have to stitch the bunny at all if you don't want to. You also notice that there is an eyelet at the top, and that is to have a ribbon tie. You can also omit that by simply skipping over the stitching. So from this point, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the mylar. That's fairly easy to tear off. Okay, and I'll remove the rest of it later. But what you want to do is remove this from the hoop. And usually what I do is I cut about a quarter of an inch all the way around. And that way, then this is ready to dissolve the stabilizer and start to assemble the bag. Again, you don't. I like the way the glitter looks in there. We'll see how it dissolves out and how strong this thing is. Next, we want to stitch the same pattern again for the back of the bag. You might want to reverse the pattern for the back so that it just look different, or you can leave the rabbit out. And so I'm going to go ahead and stitch this again. I'll do that off camera. Now here's the stabilizer that I used for the back of the rabbit. The last one I used, Baby Lock's Dissolve Away Mesh. It's a little bit thicker than this one. This one is I'm using a Pellon product that I got at Joann's. It's called 541 Wash and Gone. It's thinner. I'm not at all pleased with how it looks. So what I usually do is I'll cut these pieces off because you have areas of light and dark, and that's not giving a warm, fuzzy feeling. So I will most likely place another piece of stabilizer underneath just before I stitch. It's called Floating from Underneath, just to give this a little bit more substance to the stabilizer. Okay, I will be back. I've trimmed it about a quarter of an inch away. Now I'm ready to soak this in a bowl with some cold water, but I'm only going to soak it just until the stabilizer disappears. Once it disappears from the edges, I'm going to leave it. The reason is this stabilizer is made of starch. So therefore, if you leave the starch so that it will absorb into the fibers and not completely wash away, it'll add to the stiffness. See how fairly flimsy it is right now? So after I wash this, or after I rinse it, and dry it on a flat surface, and then maybe press it a little bit if it needs it, then it should have a lot more stiffness to it. I'm going to float a couple extra pieces of stabilizer, of that wash away stabilizer, from underneath. Just overlap it a little bit. You don't have to pin or tape it in place. Once it gets into a few stitches, it'll just go along for the ride. I'm just slipping this underneath. There, it's covering all the stitching. And now I'll go ahead and start the second half. Now I've loaded the bottom and the sides together, and it goes into the 5x7 hoops. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this. Lower the presser foot and stitch away. And I'm going to let this stitch off camera. As soon as it's done, I will be back. Bye. This is all done. This is the last bit of stitching that we need to do on the embroidery machine. We're going to remove the hoop from the machine, and I'm going to go ahead and just basically cut it out on this one end right here. One end of this is a little bit narrower than the satin stitch on the edge. On that, I'm going to leave about a 1/2 inch. So as I cut this, I'm going to leave, well, here, I'm just going to cut all of it out right now. It's easier to actually to cut it out while it's still in the hoop. That way you're not fighting it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to cut this about 1/4 inch all the way around. And these narrow ends, you've got 2 narrow ends. I'm going to leave one at 1/4 inch. Actually, one I'm going to go really close. Leave that one about 1/4 inch. Doesn't have to be exact. And this one right here with the narrow part end with the narrow satin stitch, leave that at about a 1/2 inch. Okay, now we're going to sew these ends together because this is going to make up the bottom and the sides of the basket. So we're going to, this would go underneath of the other one so that you want to get that really close. I need to trim that close. No, this one, sorry. This one here, and then I'm just going to take about a 2.5, 3 millimeter long zigzag, and I'm going to put those right next to each other, and I'm going to zigzag over them to make one long strip for the bottom and the sides of the bag. Okay, here are my 2 pieces for the bottom and the side of the basket. 3 sides have got an edge finish to it. One side has a simple zigzag or satin stitch. That's actually the center bottom of the basket. So remember I said trim one right close to the line, trim the next one about a 1/2 inch away. So I'm going to just butt these one up against the other, and on the right side of the zigzag. Okay, I'm just going to run just a simple stitch, a straight stitch, just so that these won't separate. That's why we didn't trim off that stabilizer. Okay, so I'm going to raise the needle. I'm not going to break thread. Put this right in the middle. Then I'm going to set this to a regular zigzag. And I want this fairly wide so that the right swing of the zigzag goes on this side and the left swing goes this way, and at joint you're going to butt these up against each other and just zigzag them together. Need a longer stitch length. So I'm using about a 4.5 width and about a 7 or an 8 millimeter length. I need it to move, but it doesn't have to be a satin stitch. Okay, and then I'll run a back tack. Okay, I didn't have to because I started on this end, did the straight stitch that way and turned it around. And now this is ready to soak. So you do this before you soak it to remove the stabilizer. Okay, and this all will disappear. I'm going to clip all these threads and then we will put this in water. Okay, here are my pieces ready to dissolve the stabilizer. I have the bottom and the sides because it will go like that part, and that's ready. That's sewn together. And then I have my front and my back. I did the mirror image, and I decided I really, really like the mylar in there, so I left it there. I didn't put mylar in the bottom and the sides. So now I just have a nice bowl of just cool water, not real cold, but not warm. I want it to be just room temperature water, and an old towel. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put all these in here, all these extra pieces, the scraps. Why am I doing this? Because I want to have this rather thick with starch. So I'm going to let that sit for a little bit until it dissolves away, and it will completely dissolve. Okay, and it'll get cloudy. This is what you can do with these leftover bits. Reason I'm doing that is because I want extra starch in this water, because I want this to really stiffen these pieces so that when it's dry and ready to be put together, oh, here we go. Look, it's getting all gooey. Ew, ew, ew. So anyway, why I'm doing that is because I want these to be stiff, and this is going to work just like the old, when you put the sugar water to make crochet doilies and stuff really stiff. This will do the same thing, because this stuff is nothing but starch and it's just dissolving away. But I want that starch to be absorbed into the thread, and I'm using rayon thread for that reason. I want the rayon to absorb the starch, and this is really thick, getting thick. It's nice and cloudy. Okay, so simply just dissolve. Now these I'm not going to leave in that long. We have a little bit of a margin. I'm going to simply take my fingers and rub it around so that it'll dissolve. When I don't see any more of the stabilizer, I'm taking it out. I still have some here. Now this one you should be able to see the holes start to form. This might take a little longer because I have 2 layers of the dissolve away mesh in here, but as soon as I start seeing the holes, oh, then I know, and I can feel, yep, it's coming. It takes less than 5 minutes. Okay, so now just squeeze most of it out, and I'm going to lay this flat on this towel and try to reshape it because it wants to go out of shape. So reshape that. Now you'll have another opportunity to shape it when it's dry and you press it. Okay, and this, I'm just going to leave this, shape it out nice, and leave that to dry. Same thing with these. Now these aren't going to distort because that mylar is going to protect it a little more. Okay, so I'm keeping it in the water. I'll put them both in the water. I'm putting them in the water until I no longer see that stabilizer. I see the stabilizer starting to shrivel up along the edges. So I'm just going to keep doing that until that dissolves. So maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, I think that's good. So let me move the water. Okay, and then I'm just going to set them on this towel flat to dry. Okay. Now some people like to dry their lace with an iron. I don't like to do that because the candle wicking along the edge and the bunny is sort of 3-dimensional. I really don't want to press it out. Plus I put mylar in here, so I don't need melting the mylar. So I'm just going to let this sit for a few hours, and then I will be back when it's dry and we will assemble the basket. Okay, here it is. I've let these thoroughly dry, and notice they're really nice and stiff. This is absolutely just perfect. But they're not, I left them overnight, so they sort of crinkled up a little bit. So I need to give them a little bit of a press, but not much. So you want to put a towel down on a hard surface, and then you want to have a press, like just a scrap of fabric for a press cloth. And I am using the lowest setting that my iron will do steam, and I put a little bit of water in here. Get it there. Now it's starting. See, it's starting to steam. I'm not on these pieces. I will not directly put on top. I'm going to put a press cloth there and let that steam just touch the press cloth And see now, and let them cool completely. And look how nice and flat it is. It really is nice. Okay, I'll do the same to this one. And I'm just hovering till I saturate it with some steam. And then press it with the press cloth. Okay, pull that back. And then let it cool completely before you touch it. Let it get nice and cool. And then now it's nice and flat, beautiful. Okay, and then this one doesn't necessarily have to use a press cloth. You can, but you don't have to because there's no mylar. Again, see if it's sort of push it into shape a little bit. See, this one I can touch because there's no mylar. Make that a little straighter. Okay, let that cool completely, and now we're ready to assemble this. Okay, I have marked the center bottom with just a little dot on both sides of this basket, and I just want to tape it together for now because I want these to be exactly in the same spot. So I'm going to find the center of the stitching right here, and I'm just going to tape this on. I'm just going to use a little bit of tape. Tape it right to the middle. I'll remove that tape as I stitch. Get another piece for the other. Actually, I'm going to do one side at a time because I want to set this up for a zigzag. There we go, just to tape, hold that together. I'm setting this up for a zigzag, and I want it to be a fairly narrow zigzag at about maybe 2.5 to 3, and my stitch length at maybe 0.7, just like before. Okay, I'm going to span this right here, just where it matches. I want the needle to go into here, actually on this side of the candle wicking, and I want it to just catch right here at this edge. This has got like a little ridge that you can use as your stitching line, and I just lost that there. I'm putting the tape, probably painter's tape would work better. The Scotch tape isn't working so well. And I'm going to lower the presser foot. Okay, and I'm going to just butt them together. I just want it to barely catch. I'll probably back tack a couple stitches just to reinforce it. I want to keep that line right there. I want this line to match that dot. Okay, I can take this tape off. It's not working anyway. And then stitch across to the other side. And then back tack here. Okay, I'm going to turn it over and do the same thing on this side. Okay, and butt them. And then stitch across. Okay, now I'm ready to sew this together, and I think to me the easiest way is going to be by hand. And what I want is this edge to be right up against the center of those candle wicking stitches. So I'm going to just bring my needle up sort of in the middle, I want to catch some stitches. So I've taken a tiny stitch up in here, and I'm just going to carefully go down into the edging and then come up in the next candle wick in the stitch that's right between them. Okay. And I'm going to just attach it to the next little spot into here, and then up through the next one between the two. The first couple stitches are a little awkward until it starts to take shape. As I start to lift it, just run it through and up the next one. See, right here in between. Okay, go and in. So it helps to just line it up so it's like a ladder stitch. Then go to the, see, I got it going in, then I'm coming up in the next one. Now it's a little loose still, that's okay. Okay, then I'll shape it, see where the thread comes out, and this goes straight into the edge, then up the next candle wick stitch. I wish there were an easier way other than, you know, gluing it with the hot glue to do this. I'm looking, there's my thread, so I'm going to go straight down into the edge. Probably going to do several of them before I tighten. Okay, so now as I tighten, it's starting to take shape. So now you want to come over to this side and make sure when you go to tighten your threads, make sure that this is just on the inside right here so that it'll, there we go, give it a good pull. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, now I've come to this last one, so I'm going to do the last shaping. Make sure that's all inside there. Give it a good tug. Okay, and I'm going to do the last stitch here, right at the top. I'm going to work from this outside here because I want that to be right at the right spot. Give it about 3 or 4 stitches just to reinforce it, and then knot it off and do the other side. Okay, that's half done. I'm going to start from the center and work out. So on this side I'll go this way because I really want to make sure that that ends up at the same spot. So what you can do is mark this with a little blue marker where you need to end it. So it needs to end right here, just so that it's right across from the other one. Yeah. Okay, so that's where I need to end. So I might have to do a little bit of stretching. And then when I do this side, I'll work from the outside. And I'll stitch this, do the same thing, but instead of being inside, because you can't really stick your hands in there, I'll work from the outside. Okay, I will be back. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process on this side and then the other 3 sides, and I'll be back. Now I'm ready to do this last side here, and I'm going to sew this from the outside. In fact, I sewed these other 2 sides on from the outside, and it actually was a lot easier. Okay, so I'm just pulling my knot through somewhere in the bottom, making a small knot. And again, same thing, I'm going to come up whichever way. Okay. Okay, and now I have, if you consider this little bead right here as like a, or this little candle wicking stitch as if it were a bead, then you know you can't sew through it. So I'm going to go straight. If I'm going between the beads, I'm going to go straight. And I'm going to come up on between the next two beads. Okay, the first stitch is the hardest because you got a lot of stitching here to go through. Just shape it as you go, pinching it from the outside, going straight across the bead and into the next, between the next two beads. Do a loose stitch, like 3 at a time, a loose stitch. There's 2. So when you're going between the beads, your needle is slanted, and you're coming straight into the edge. And then coming up between. I don't really am too concerned about positioning everything perfect, because about every 3 stitches I'm going to pull on my thread. I'm going to leave those loose for now. And then here's the 3rd bead. Hardest part is not letting them get caught on that part. Okay, so now I've done 3 stitches. It could be 3, 5, whatever you're comfortable with, and then I'm going to position that and give it a good tug. That's why you want to use a nice strong thread. Same color as your other thread. And then I'm going to go straight across here and come up between the same 2 beads. And run your needle inside this loop, and that gives you a slip knot. Okay, go on to the next one. Same thing, go straight across, same place. And then come up between the next 2 beads. So this is just a simple whip stitch. There's nothing complex about it. It doesn't have to even be particularly neat, because you know it's gonna blend in with the other thread. So then I'm going to come over here and line it all up nicely, just right where I want it, and then give it a tug. Then give it a slip stitch. So 3 stitches, a slip stitch. As I get maybe about 1.5 inches from the top, I'm going to check that that things are still in alignment, because you can make little adjustments, and that's just going to work just perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish stitching this off, and I will be back. Okay, it's all finished. It's all sewn together. Only thing that's left to do is I've got an eyelet right here for some ribbon. I'm just going to feed this ribbon in here. Might be easier this way. I messed that up. Okay, and just tie a bow. This is the part I can't do. I can't tie bows worth a darn. Let's see. Doesn't even have to be a really good bow. Yeah, this is the one thing I'm not good at, is tying bows at all. Probably a good thing I had boys. Poor little girl would look horrible all the time. Okay. Okay, that's as good as a bow as I can get. If it doesn't want to, if it's kind of rocky, it means the bottom isn't quite flat. So what you can do is spray this with some spray starch just to dampen the bottom part, and then set it on a flat surface with something heavy inside with a couple nuts and bolts or whatever. So just anything heavy, some pebbles or marbles or whatever, just to shape that so that it's flat at the bottom. And see, now it's ready to hold some really cute goodies for Easter. Okay, it's all finished. I've just tied a bow through the eyelets on either side, filled it with some flowers, and now I've got a wonderful little centerpiece for a small table for Easter. If you would like a copy of the PES embroidery files for this little basket, send an email request to me at waltzquilt@yahoo.com and I'll be happy to send it to you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Till next time, bye.